Have you ever asked what happens to a child when the very people meant to protect them become the source of their deepest wounds? What happens when a home becomes a place of fear instead of safety? Abuse, neglect, violence, parents lost in addiction, depression, or silence. These experiences don't just hurt in the moment, they leave marks that last a lifetime. The truth is devastating. Studies show that children who grow up in homes marked by trauma carry the weight into their bodies and minds. They are more likely to struggle with depression, anxiety, addiction, more likely to face heart disease, cancer, or even early death. And the most shocking number, childhood trauma can shorten a life by up to 20 years. 20 years taken away, not by accident, not by disease, but by pain that was never healed. Think about what that means. A child who learns to hide their tears may grow into an adult who doesn't know how to rest. A child who grows up afraid of anger may become a partner who never feels safe in love. A child who learns that silence is survival may carry that silence into every room for decades. This is how the pain follows. This is how it never truly leaves. And yet, most of these wounds remain invisible. There are no scars to point to, no X-ray that reveals the damage. They live quietly, in racing heartbeats, in sleepless nights, in the constant feeling that peace is dangerous. Not all wounds bleed, but all wounds change us. This is the reality of childhood trauma. To understand the full weight of its cost, we must begin at the beginning by asking, what exactly is childhood trauma? The question sounds simple, but the answer is heavy. What is childhood trauma? Childhood trauma is not the everyday struggles that help a child grow. It is not losing a game, failing an exam, or moving to a new city. Those moments may hurt, but with love and safety, children recover. Trauma is different. It is not a single bruise or a bad memory. It is an atmosphere that overwhelms a child's sense of safety and belonging. It is the difference between stumbling on the path and having the ground pulled out from beneath you. At its core, trauma happens when the very people and places that should protect instead create fear. It is physical abuse that makes the body flinch. It is emotional abuse that turns words into weapons. It is neglect that leaves a child hungry, not only for food, but for care and presence. It is a home ruled by chaos, parents lost to addiction, drowning in depression, nights filled with shouting, or worse, the silence of abandonment. Trauma is not only what was done, it is what was missing: protection, affection, stability. Sometimes it looks like a child waiting at the window long past dark. Sometimes it looks like a boy covering his ears as plates shatter in the kitchen. Sometimes it looks like a girl too ashamed to invite friends over. These are not small struggles. They are invisible wars. Children fight alone. Researchers call these adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. The phrase may sound clinical, but behind it are lived realities: being hit or humiliated, being left alone. Watching your parents fight until home feels like a battlefield, living through divorce, incarceration, or mental illness. Each ACE is like a stone on a child's back. One stone is heavy, 4, 5, or more, and the weight becomes unbearable. And here lies the cruel difference. Normal stress teaches resilience, but trauma teaches survival at any cost. It rewires the brain's alarm system. It convinces the child that love must be earned, that needs are dangerous, that silence is safer than truth. That is why so many children hide behind masks. They smile when they ache inside. They give comfort while receiving none. Because for them, one truth is carved deep: Attachment is survival. Children would rather break themselves than break the bond. This is the essence of childhood trauma. Not fragility, but a weight no child was built to carry. Childhood trauma does not vanish when the moment ends. It lingers, settling into the body like a shadow that refuses to lift. To see why, we must look at the science of survival. The body's stress system, called the HPA axis, is designed to protect us. When danger appears, it releases cortisol, sharpens focus, and prepares us to fight or run. In a safe world, the alarm sounds, the danger passes, and the system quiets down. But in a childhood filled with yelling, neglect, or violence, that alarm never turns off. It is like a smoke detector that shrieks all night even when there is no fire. The body learns to live as if danger is constant. Studies confirm this. Children exposed to chronic adversity often show cortisol levels 2 to 3 times higher than peers. Proof their bodies are trained to survive, not to rest. Over time, this relentless alarm changes the brain. The prefrontal cortex, the part that helps us plan and regulate emotions, weakens, like a muscle worn down from overuse. The amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes hypersensitive, reacting to the smallest spark as if it were an explosion. And the reward system, which lets us feel joy and motivation, grows dimmer, making pleasure harder to hold. Trauma doesn't just leave memories. It rewires the brain's circuits, shaping how a child feels the world and how an adult navigates it. But the damage does not stop in the brain. An overactive stress system wears down the immune system, leaving the body more vulnerable to illness. Hormones fall out of balance, disrupting sleep, mood, and growth. And deep in the body, trauma writes itself into our genes. Through epigenetics, extreme stress can flip switches on or off, altering the body's blueprint in ways that increase disease risk. Even more haunting, these changes can echo into future generations, as if pain itself becomes an inheritance. It is like the body keeps a diary of every wound, and sometimes those notes are passed forward, shaping how the next generation responds to stress before they even speak their first word. So, what does this mean? It means the child who once braced for every slammed door may become an adult whose heart races at the slightest argument. The girl who grew up in fear may carry that tension into her health, her relationships, her sense of safety. The body never forgets. This is the cruel truth of childhood trauma. It is not only psychological, it is biological. It reshapes the brain, burdens the immune system, and leaves marks in our DNA. The past does not stay in the past. It continues to live in the body, whispering through every system forced to adapt. And those whispers don't stay hidden. They appear in broken health, restless minds, in the quiet exhaustion so many adults carry without knowing why. That bridge between science and consequence leads us into the realities of adulthood. Science shows us how trauma imprints itself on the brain, the body, even the DNA. But data alone cannot capture the quiet cost of a childhood marked by pain. Because those altered stress systems do not stay hidden in laboratories. They walk into classrooms, they sit in workplaces, they grow into families. To understand the full weight, we must turn from biology to real life, where numbers become stories and statistics become faces. When scientists began to measure the impact of childhood trauma, the findings were startling. The ACEs study, one of the largest of its kind, showed that trauma in childhood is not rare at all. About 67% of adults reported at least one adverse childhood experience, and 12.6%, roughly 1 in 8, lived through 4 or more. These numbers are not statistics on a page. They tell us that many of the people around us carry silent burdens from their earliest years. The effects are not only emotional, they are physical and lifelong. Adults with multiple ACEs face far higher rates of chronic illnesses. The risk of chronic lung disease like COPD increases. The likelihood of heart disease grows. Even the risk of developing cancer rises. And the mind carries scars just as deep. Depression and anxiety become far more common. The most painful figure of all is that the risk of attempting suicide is 12 times higher in those with many ACEs compared to those with none. 12 times higher, an echo of how heavy that early weight can be. These outcomes become clearer when we picture a single child. Imagine a boy who grows up in a home where violence is part of the daily rhythm. Night after night, he watches his father hurt his mother. His body tenses at every sound of raised voices. His sleep is broken by fear. At school, he struggles to concentrate, carrying exhaustion and dread into the classroom. As he grows older, the fear doesn't vanish. It shows up in his health, in his relationships, and in the way his body and mind respond to the world. But the consequences of ACEs ripple outward beyond individuals. Communities shaped by high levels of trauma see higher rates of substance use, unemployment, and cycles of violence. A person who learned to numb their pain as a child may turn to drugs or alcohol later in life. Someone who never experienced stability may find it harder to hold on to steady work or safe relationships. And when trauma is not healed, it can spill forward, creating new harm and new generations caught in the same cycle. This is why the ACEs research matters. It reveals that childhood trauma is not simply a private memory locked in the past. It has visible footprints in public health, in social stability, and in the very fabric of our communities. The lesson is clear. Childhood pain, when left unhealed, does not stay confined to childhood. It shows up in hospitals, in workplaces, in prisons, and in families. It shortens lives, not just in years, but in the quality of those years. And if the cycle is not broken, the cost is carried forward again and again. The question that follows is not whether trauma matters. It clearly does. The question is what we can do, as individuals and as a society, to turn this knowledge into healing and hope. The pain of childhood trauma is not only a memory of the past, it is alive in the present. Look around, and you will see children carrying wounds that no one can see. In classrooms, some are crushed beneath relentless academic pressure, feeling that a single failure defines their worth. In homes divided by divorce, others move between houses with a suitcase in hand, wondering where they truly belong. The pandemic has left many isolated, robbed of laughter and friendship, replaced with hours of loneliness in front of glowing screens. And more than ever, young people speak of panic attacks, sleepless nights, and the heavy thought that maybe life is too much to bear. These are not isolated stories. They are happening every day. Trauma is not confined to one place or one kind of family. It does not only belong to poor neighborhoods or broken homes. It hides in polished houses where smiles are rehearsed for photographs, while silence or conflict fills the nights. A child with every material comfort may still feel invisible if no one listens. No one notices. No one cares. Trauma does not discriminate. It crosses boundaries of wealth, culture, and status. The face of trauma can be any face, anywhere. And here is where the effects become lasting. Children who grow up with unhealed wounds do not simply leave them behind. They carry them into adulthood, where the pain takes new shapes. Many become hypervigilant, always scanning for danger, unable to relax even in safety. Some struggle with intimacy, fearing that closeness will lead to betrayal. Others overachieve, using success as armor to hide their fear of being unworthy. Many avoid conflict at all costs, even when it means silencing their own needs. And far too often, adults who once had to be strong as children still feel guilty for needing help, still apologize for their tears, still confuse exhaustion with strength. These patterns are not choices. They are survival strategies, carried forward long after the danger has passed. This is why childhood trauma matters today, because unhealed wounds do not stay contained in one life. They ripple outward. They weaken classrooms where learning falters. They strain workplaces where trust is fragile. They fracture families as pain repeats itself from one generation to the next. A wounded society raises wounded generations. And unless we face this truth together, the cycle will continue, quietly, invisibly, but powerfully shaping the world we share. If trauma can leave scars that last for decades, then the question is urgent. How do we heal? The answer is not simple, but it is possible. Healing begins when solutions are clear, practical, and within reach. On the medical level, change starts with recognition. ACE screenings, simple sets of questions, allow doctors to see risks that might otherwise stay hidden. Early intervention can prevent small wounds from becoming lifelong illnesses. Multidisciplinary care brings together therapists, physicians, and social workers to treat the whole person. Because trauma is not only in the mind or the body, it is in both. When healthcare listens to stories instead of only symptoms, patients can begin to feel seen again. On the personal level, healing is about tools we can carry into everyday life. Therapy creates space for words where once there was silence. Mindfulness teaches the nervous system to breathe, reminding the body that it no longer lives in constant danger. Physical activity helps regulate hormones and restore balance. Movement becomes medicine. And perhaps most importantly, social support reminds survivors that healing does not happen in isolation. A single safe friend, a supportive family member, or a trusted mentor can make the difference between despair and resilience. On the community level, solutions must be woven into the places where children grow. Schools can provide not only education, but also trauma-informed counseling and safe environments where children learn trust. Healthcare systems can train professionals to respond with empathy instead of blame. Public policies can invest in prevention, supporting parents, strengthening safety nets, and reducing the cycles of violence and neglect that pass from one generation to the next. A society that protects its children protects its future. But we must also remember, healing is not a straight path. Some days move forward, others fall back. That does not mean failure. It means the process is alive. The journey is not about erasing pain, but about transforming it into strength. And perhaps the bravest step is the simplest: asking for help. For too long, many have believed that silence equals strength, but silence keeps wounds hidden. Asking for help is not weakness. It is survival. Because trauma is treatable, healing is possible. And every step toward healing is a step that changes not only one life, but generations to come. Healing is never easy, but every path we've explored leads to one truth. It begins with a choice. And the first step is courage, to face it, to name it, and to heal from it. Courage does not mean you are unafraid. It means you take one step even while your hands still tremble. Healing begins in that moment of honesty, when you stop turning away from the wound and begin to look at it with compassion. Because what wasn't your fault is still your responsibility to heal. And healing is not just possible, it's powerful. So, if these words resonate with you, let this be an invitation. Share your story, or share your silence. But don't carry it alone. Leave a comment, offer your voice, or simply whisper to yourself that you are ready to begin. Like this message. Share it with someone you care about, because you never know whose hidden pain may need to hear these truths today. Healing does not happen in isolation. It spreads through connection, through community, through the simple act of being seen. We are not defined by the pain we inherited, but by the healing we choose. Every act of healing, whether personal or collective, becomes a seed planted in the soil of tomorrow. When one person faces their wounds, a family changes. When a family changes, a community breathes differently, and when communities heal, generations find new ground to stand on. We are the movement. Not one voice, but many. Not one story, but 1,000 rising together. Your healing is not only for you, it is for all who come after you. And that is the power of courage, to turn pain into strength, wounds into wisdom, and silence into a song that carries us forward.